But when they hydrofrack, they bring in water to do the hydrofrack with. So that's, like I say, that's not pertinent to a gas frac. There are places where there's production that is significant enough that it's worth it to haul in all the water that's necessary to do the hydrofrac, and then if a state permits, there are places where they drill deep injection wells and pump the wastewater down to a very great depth. And I've heard that there are places, if they do that over a fracture, that can create problems. But that's we have no plans for hydrofracking, and we're not. That's something that that's not a pertinent issue to the doing a gas frac in the Taylorsville Basin. This is a different matter. But if you have friends in Midland, then you should know that this might address that first question that we had somewhat, because when I lived in Midland, there were over 300 independent oil companies there. This is something that a lot of people, they think that, well, if you're not one of the companies that retails oil, that you're some kind of anomaly. Well, actually, the companies that retail oil are the anomaly as far as the numbers go. There are literally thousands of independent oil companies in the United States, and it's something that it would take a long, long time to explain. You could take a course in how an independent oil company is developed, but if you've been in Midland, you must realize that there are I'm sure you've seen all the skyscrapers in Midland, and it's something that most people here, if it hadn't been for George W. Bush, probably would have never heard of Midland. But I can remember living out there, that when I lived out there, people would come and happen to be visiting there for some reason and say, wow, we were wondering where we were. What are all those buildings out there in the middle of the prairie land? It's because they're home offices to over 300 oil companies at the time that I lived there. And then all these, 10 and 20 story, 10 and 20 story skyscrapers. And somebody I know that lives in the area now said that there are plans for a 40-story skyscraper because of hydraulic fracking. They've been getting oil from the Permian Basin for close to 60 years now. And it's something that with hydraulic fracking, they're now saying that they don't think they've gotten even half as much as will be recoverable. So it's something that is a very significant thing in West Texas right now.
Question for Captain Nette. Notice I've got to go back and forth with folks because we have more than one guest here.
Yes, I would like to ask one more time about the road. I live on 214, which is Potomac Drive, and I have talked to neighbors, and we're just concerned about the traffic on our road from B-Gate all the way down to the light at Dahlgren Road. And while we can't get a better road there, that road is not as bad as it is now. And the quality of whatever tar and sand and gravel they put there, it's just not, it doesn't hold up anymore than maybe a month or two, and then it's ruddy, and it's just a terrible road, and it didn't used to be that way. I'm telling you, I lived there as a kid growing up. The road has gotten to, it's either going to have people running off the side of the road or running into people's houses because the ruts in the road are outrageous. Now, I don't know how many people ride on that road every day. I don't count cars, but I think when the guy was talking with fracturing about money coming back to the county, I don't know how much money comes back to the county from the people that work on the base. I don't work on the base. But I just say they use the roads, but nobody does anything to make that quality of the road be better. And it's terrible. It's a shame to live on a road that you know is deteriorated and no one does anything other than saying, well, if you can't get from B-Base, go to 3 weeks, and whether you go one hour.
I do drive that road, not during working hours, but and it is in bad shape. But all we can do is, just like you in this public forum, is advocate for it. The traffic changes that occurred, hopefully that'll minimize some of not going to, from an installation point, other than, partnering in the joint land use study and things like that, there's not a lot that we as an installation have any kind of authority or funding or any of that type. But back a little while ago, though, I talked a little bit about perhaps an opportunity to lead out and some federal funding in the county and trying to figure out a way is as you improve or look at access to DOD installations, if there's an avenue or a way to improve access to the installation, perhaps through various federal funding. I don't know the process or what it entails to do that.
Before you came, I'm going to tell you what happened. A group of guys from the base, the sailors, ran into our house once when I was a little kid. And the road didn't used to look like it does now. The road was that little turn that goes around, that's where the houses are. And somebody improved that road. Now, I don't know if the base did it. I don't know if the federal government or the state did it. But somebody, after that accident, that road got straightened out real quick. And it got straightened out very quick. I would say in less than 6 months, they decided they were going to straighten out that road because somebody could have killed somebody in my house when the car ran into the house, coming around the corner. So people can do what they want to do, especially if they think somebody's going to take it.
VDOT's going to be at our May 6th meeting, supervisor meeting, to present their 6-year plan. You should be there to talk to Mr. Brown,
All right, thank you.
all right? And we'll find out if Potomac Drive is a primary arterial or if it's a secondary road between now and then, so that way we know how to address it with them, okay? All right, question for Congressman Wittman, anybody?
All the way back here.
Congressman Wittman?
I don't need that, unless you go to him first.
You have a question for Congressman Wittman? No? Yeah, that's what everybody wants, right? I know. Does anybody have a question for Congressman Wittman? Okay, all right. And then you back there.
Hey, Whitman, well,
Yes.
Rob, whatever you want to get
Yes.
called.
Rob is fine.
Quick question, and this is for CAPT as well. I know a lot of people want to come work on base, but are there jobs, are you two doing your effort to bring more jobs to Dahlgren? I know people, some of my friends, my sister's boyfriend, they want to come to Virginia, and so I want to know what you all are doing to bring jobs to this area.
Well, I'll speak and then I'll let Captain Nette speak. As you know, we're blessed here at Dahlgren to have lots of different facilities that do a lot of work for the Navy. The big asset there is our Naval Research Lab. It does a variety of jobs there, and it also works with a number of companies in the region to do jobs for the Navy, but also for the other branches of the service. It contracts out work for the Army, for the Marine Corps, and for the Air Force. So that's the great opportunity there. What we want to make sure is when there's a need, that the Navy lab here can compete to get those jobs here. And they've been very, very successful in doing that. We want to make sure that there's more opportunities here for that to happen. Also, as we look at where the needs are within the military, as you know, there's also a look at how do we use the resources that are out there. I want to make sure that as we look at that, things like the Ballistic Missile Defense Mission, where we have now located the Center for Excellence here at Dahlgren, that's a great example of how we can leverage those opportunities here with the things that are at Dahlgren. We have a lot of great efforts here. The Chief of Naval Operations is getting ready to come down and visit our directed energy programs here. Lasers, rail guns, those are all great, great efforts that are taking place here. Those are only going to get bigger in the future. The Chief of Naval Operations is coming here for one reason, because of the work that's going on here. Those are great stories, great opportunities as we invest more in those areas of technology, that Dahlgren will have an even greater role in doing that work. So I'm excited about that. We're always pushing to make sure that as we look at those opportunities, Dahlgren is part of that. I'll turn it over to Captain Nette.
Yes, sir. On our point from our aspect from the installation, it's more of us, the installation commander, supporting our tenants. So as Congressman Wittman said, Aegis B&B is growing. They completed a new building a couple of years ago, anticipating more growth. Railgun, of course, is expanding. It's got a lot of interest both here and abroad, and directed energy. The cruiser destroyer modernization program that the Navy's undergoing adds another, I don't know how many thousands of square feet for the next generation of cruisers. So my role as the installation commander is to prioritize projects and help advocate for my tenants. It could be Naval Surface Warfare Center, or Aegis Training Readiness Center, to ensure that their priorities are met when it comes to facility construction and just like a quality of life. A couple of years ago, NSWC, when we started briefing this, they look for about 200 or so graduates a year. Is their growth plan, and that was one of the reasons UMW campus is here as well. So from an installation, that's what we provide to support those mission sets. And if you pay attention in the future also, as more MILCOM comes down, you can kind of see where the Navy is focusing, and that's where the job growth is. And like Congressman said, this is Aegis combat weapon system heaven. Everything for a surface warfare officer desires is here at Dahlgren. We have the range and anticipate more growth. Maybe not in footprint, but as technology continues to evolve.
Thank you.
Congressman Wittman, this one's for you too.
Yes.
I'd like to make a real quick comment to the gentlemen from Shore Production. It seems like the sales pitch you have presented before us is an echo of things that have happened in the past. I mean, how wonderful it was going to be for this county, our taxes would never go up, and yet the Fortune 500 waste management, tomorrow our taxes go up. Disappointed in you, sir, especially with this. You should know this. This is a letter I received from a nonprofit organization in Washington, D.C. It's called Food and Water Watch. And what they do is they watch for environmental changes to the food we eat and the water we drink. And the letter I have, I'll certainly give you a copy of it. It says, "Dear supporter, if you're concerned about the safety of our water and the environment, I know you'll want to hear about this. Whistleblowers from the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, recently revealed that in 2012, the EPA abandoned an investigation of fracking-related water contamination in Denmark, Pennsylvania. After the EPA staff member raised the flag that was likely caused by fracking." It goes further on to say, there's an unfortunate trend here because there's also abandoning their fracking-related water contamination investigations in Pavilion, Wyoming, and Weatherford, Texas. When I see this and I hear you, I get nervous because we're not getting the right information somewhere.
Well, I'm glad to take that up and take a look at it. But as you know, here in Virginia, the Departments of Mine, Minerals, and Energy does the permitting process. Certainly, I'll look into the complaints that are lodged with the EPA and see what due diligence has been done there. But the permitting process here in Virginia is at a state and local level, so there's no federal permitting
I understand
as far as
But I
fracking.
get nervous when I see the EPA getting pulled off something that
Well, I'll certainly,
does.
I'm glad to look into it to see allegedly what happened as far as who pulled them off. Glad to
Thank
take
you
a
very
look.
much, sir.
Sure, thank you.
All right, fracking, everybody's favorite topic.
Several times it was mentioned in your presentations, I think both of you, that the plan was to use nitrogen fracking. My question is, when you go and sign these leases, are you going to be contractually held to nitrogen fracking, or are you going to be able to revert to hydraulic fracking?
I can answer that question fairly quickly. Depends on the contract. You don't know. I have no plans to use it. I have a very strong interest in preserving the environment. I've lived in Ashland, Virginia for 76 years, in Caroline County, Southern Caroline County, for 10 generations. I have no intention of seeing anything done that would degrade or harm any of the environment, air quality, groundwater, surface. Will we be able to convince a company not to use hydraulic fracking if they want to? Well, there's more than one company. And I think I pointed out to you that the reason our geologists don't want to use hydraulic fracking is because when you put water on the shales in the Taylorsville Basin, they swell. Fracking is supposed to open fractions in the shale so that the gas and oil is that can migrate to the wellbore and then to the surface. If you put water on it and close those fractions, you've defeated your purpose. It doesn't make any sense.
It's
There's
cheaper
been
though.
over 1,800 wells fracked with nitrogen in Western Virginia. Not a single complaint has been lodged about groundwater or surface water quality. Not one.
My concern is also that he keeps saying we have no plans to, that says that, well, if we knew you were going to do that. And the reason I'm concerned is because of the aquifer and the management of the aquifer we have here, okay? We're at the tipping point, we've passed the tipping point now in the aquifer. The aquifer no longer flows from west to east, it flows from east to west, okay? That means that withdrawal rate from the aquifer is not sufficient, is the replenishment rate for the aquifer is not sufficient to overcome the withdrawal rates. And if you have to go to hydraulic fracking, that takes water. And I've seen lots of articles about it that say enormous amounts of water. How much that means, I don't know. But if we're going to withdraw more water from the aquifer, then I would feel a lot better if you say we are going to do gas fracking, and we're not going to do, but you're not saying that.
All I can tell you is that if I have anything to do with the gas fracking. But let me say something about the aquifer. There are currently, under the Water Control Board, 159 million gallons withdrawn from that aquifer every day. I happen to have property on the on the Monkey Road, next to Smurfit Stone paper mill. They have a Water Control Board permit to take 23 million gallons a day. There is nothing that can be taken out of the total aquifer for the energy. Zero. And your aquifer is completely unsustainable. What are your politicians doing to provide for the future? What drinking water are you going to depend on?
Well, if you're going to withdraw more water, then that's going to exacerbate the problem.
It almost, well, Texas is the place where the biggest use of water is going on. They use 1% of the water in Texas for the energy. 1%. We do not intend to use water. And the reason is scientifically strong. You don't use water where it defeats your purpose. Now, there's a lot of other reasons not to use water. It's environmentally much better. It saves you a lot of money, and it makes better relations with your neighbors. You don't have all this truck traffic going back, hauling in water, and then trying to dispose of wastewater. Water is very expensive. Obviously, if I were a farmer trying to sell water to an energy company, I would want a lot of money for it. And maybe some farmers would sell it to us. But I have no intention of trying to buy it.
Then why don't you say we're going to use gas fracking and we're not going to use hydraulic fracking?
Okay, I can tell you what I can say, which is relatively short, because I'm 76 years old, and I'm 5 months into a 6 to 8 month medium life expectancy. So I don't expect to be around very long, and that's a factual concern. I can tell you that I have no intention of using anything but a gas frac.
Okay, so, all right, next question.
I've got several from people who can't attend.
The gentleman that brought up the earthquakes brought up a theory called unintended consequences.
Yes.
And there is no way you can predict the consequences of all these. And I don't want to bet the unique aquifer you were talking about for a profit.
Well, all I can tell you is that there have been 1,800 wells fracked in Virginia, over 1 million in the United States. And people who were in the Obama administration and still in the Obama administration who are considered very pro-environmental, Ken Salazar, they all have said,
for the earthquakes to come up.
okay, well, earthquakes is another issue.
Yeah, yes, but that's an unintended consequence.
Well, it is.
And it may take 20 years for it to come up. And all these other places that you were at may have unintended consequences that we don't know.
They have been fracking for 60 years.
Not horizontally.
They've been fracking for 60 years. Right, Bud? We don't intend to do it horizontally.
There'll be no horizontal drilling?
No.
There'll be no cracking of the pipe to get the gas out so that the natural gas will...
All fracking, it actually uses explosives to fracture the
That's right,
chain.
and you will be putting something in underground where our aquifer is. Now, do you have the money, the small company, with no board of directors?
Okay,
no
Coons,
financial
hey, Coons,
services?
hey,
Wait a minute.
Coons.
That's a
Right,
misstatement.
We have a
Hold
board
on.
of directors. Right, so.
That's a misstatement.
I'm No, everybody has questions about fracking, but
Well, why don't
just
you
in
guys wait
case,
and talk to me afterwards? It's a lot
does
easier.
anybody have, because I don't want to leave anybody out, does anybody have any further questions for Captain Netta?
Yeah. It's
No.
easy to
Does
talk.
anybody have any further questions for Congressman Wittman?
This is for the captain.
Gentleman back here, you have a question for Congressman Wittman?
Let me just throw out a comment. King George High School government class saw you last week. They're up in Washington.
Yes.
Comments I heard from those teenagers were all over Washington. People shuffled them aside and didn't let them see what they wanted to see, and they remembered that you spent a lot of time with them and were the only person that wasn't trying to get rid of them.
They are a great group of young folks, and they were like sponges. We came and talked about a lot of issues, and it's amazing how thoughtful and insightful they are on issues. I wish I could keep them up in Washington for longer because they would help a lot of people up there solve some of these problems that we've got. Very, very thoughtful.
Anybody else for Congressman Wittman? Congressman, thank you for being here.
Dee, thank you.
I have a statement as well. I wanted to thank you for the letter that you wrote on behalf of my daughter, Catherine, and let you know that she is a member of the freshman class at Virginia Tech and in the Corps of Cadets.
Fantastic.
So, also, ladies and gentlemen, my husband's an auctioneer, and he always tells people how much they make at benefits right at the end with incidentally. I wanted to thank all of you for your contributions tonight to Clara and her fellow classmates going to Atlanta. You raised over $230 here this evening, so thank you so very much. We really appreciate it. Anyone else for Congressman Wittman before we go back to fracking? All right,
And
fracking.
sorry for bragging on Ron. He's the reason we have the community care clinic up and going here, too.
Very good. Thank you, Rolly.
You mentioned about jobs brought to the area. In particular, specifically, what jobs would come to King George for long-term, not short-term while fracking's going on?
Yeah,
Specific jobs.
we can't really predict whether we will be successful or not. We think that there is commercial oil and gas there from the information we have. If it is successful, it's a relatively small play. It's not like the Permian Basin that Ken was talking about where they're producing over 1 million gallons of oil alone, or the Eagle Ford, another basin in Texas where there's another 1 million gallons being produced. It would be much more modest than that. That's an honest assessment. But having said that, the average salary in oil industry, energy industry, Marcellus,
I'm
back
asking
in,
jobs. What specific jobs?
hang on a second,
Positions
hang on a
for
second,
King George?
is 107, King George?
Yes, in King George, if there'd be fracking in King George, what specific jobs?
Yeah, well, let me
Would
go,
be for the residents here in town.
the first, if you have a robust well drilling and completion program, you would probably be drilling something like 9 wells per 40 acres, over 50 years. And a well crew would probably have 100, 150 people on it, if in fact they were doing a real professional job.
Okay, so they're gonna bring in the well crew. What specific jobs would be in King George?
No, they wouldn't bring in the
for
well crew.
residents?
There's companies who we dealt with that make a specific effort to hire locally. Hillcall, that we talked to, for example, has a very strong program that, in fact, one of the first things they do when they hire somebody is they give them 10% of their salary as a bonus to contribute to their favorite charity. Over $2 million has been contributed to churches that work for all in the United States. In the energy industry, the average salary, as you all know, I'm sure, in the United States is $49,000. That's the median salary. In the energy industry, it's $107,000. $107,000 is more than $49,000. The average salary in the Eagle Ford, which is a very high play, is $127,000.
I wanna know specifically, what jobs are they gonna?
Truck driver, rustabout, well completion, people would be trained to do those jobs. What you want is you want local people who will stay there. And you want them to have good relations with the community. You want them to be your neighbors, people that you go to church with, and that you know who they are. Because that way you'll, that's right, that way you
You're not
avoid,
answering the question, never mind.
that way you avoid problems.
Another question for shore exploration. since we haven't defined, or you haven't identified any drilling companies by name, and you are the ones that are doing the leasing right now, will Shore Exploration have the responsibility, God forbid, anything happens during the drilling efforts?
Depends on whether Shore stays in the play or not. If Shore remains a partner in the play, yes. If in fact the company that buys us out wants to buy 100% of it, it would be the new company. But again, I go back to what I said originally. Local supervisors, the state DMME and DEQ, and even the government, if you find oil, there's a special provision for the Chesapeake Bay watershed that says you have to have a 2-year moratorium and a plan developed to develop oil. 2 years. That's beyond my life expectancy. What I'm telling you is that this is not something that's going to happen tomorrow. It's not something that you won't know about. And it's not something you will be surprised about. We were, in fact, very surprised when all of this environmental opposition came up, largely based on misinformation. We were quite surprised because it's way ahead. We've never asked for a permit to drill anything. People are, I guess at my age, 76, I'm a cynic. They raise a lot of money doing that.
Something that happens is that the way that the independent oil business works is that it's the perfect example, the old expression that says, don't put all your eggs in one basket. If growing up in Midland and having knowing all kinds of people who worked in the oil industry there and with the independents there, it's something that very common occurrence is there might be a project that a geologist who has gone out on his own, who has a tremendous success record with a major pipe or with a large independent, goes out on his own, and there are plenty of people that if you just, it's kind of hard to imagine if you aren't there, but there are people that they've been everywhere, they don't want a bigger boat, they don't want a bigger airplane, they don't want a bigger house to keep up. The most fun they ever had was watching those wells come in. Las Vegas can't cover the bets they can make, but they can, the only thing that can is investing in independent oil projects. And so these independent oil projects, these independent companies, it's very common, they invest in each other's projects all the time. The national average is 1 out of 8, some people say 1 out of 10 new prospects that brings in a new field.
Hopefully
so it's very, very risky. So they might get, we've only had one project that we didn't have, maybe a dozen people in. It's like somebody, gets a tenth, somebody else gets, you have all these people that invest in bringing oil production to a new place. And it's something that that's the way it works. We did have one project.
Question. I don't want to tie up other people.
Okay, I do want to say one quick thing. Take a half a minute.
Real quick.
One thing is that I did not mention, and that is with Department of Mines, Mineral, and Energy, they give one permit at a time. They don't say, okay, you've got a permit to drill 100 wells in this place or 50 wells in this place or whatever. They give you a permit to drill one well, and you have to do it right if you ever plan on getting a permit to drill another one. And so it's something that's an additional part of the checks and balances of the Department of Mines, Mineral, and Energy that is, I think, very, very significant. And if I could just add one more thought, and that is, there are a lot of, I've had people say, well, it must drive you crazy, all these regulations.
Excuse me, sir, I would like to ask my question.
Oh, okay.
You guys need to.
How will the well product that is going to come from these drilled wells be transported to market, truck or pipeline? That's the first part. Yeah. And if it's a truck, have you talked to the state of Maryland about increased truck traffic on the Harry Nice Bridge?
Do you have an answer?
Truck or pipeline?
Building a pipeline, what was the question again?
Yeah, see, now we know.
Truck or pipeline?
Are you going truck or pipeline to get the product to market?
Well, it depends on the product. If it's the gas, it has to be pipeline. If it's oil, there are alternatives. You use railroads and you use trucks. Pipeline is always preferred.
How about, have you heard about the
No, Steve.
Cove Point project?
The what?
The Cove Point project
Yes,
in Maryland?
The
Are
Dominion
you
Resources.
planning on using that?